members of Colorado's federal delegation, Sheriff Pelley, many others, touring the devastation, meeting with families, hearing from them firsthand, families who don't have a home to return to. I want to thank President Biden, FEMA Director Criswell for coming to our state, to our community, for spending time with Coloradans during what for many of them is the most difficult hour of their lives. Just hours after the fire, local, state, federal government joined nonprofit and community organizations, mobilizing critical resources. We still have resources available in the Boulder County Southeast Hub for anybody whose home or business was destroyed. If you haven't been there yet, please come by, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. The Disaster Assistance Center, 1755 South Public Road in Lafayette. Just so you know, folks are already getting aid. There's not a lot of help that FEMA provides, but there is already about $500,000. But the biggest program that is a fit for most of the homeowners affected is actually through the SBA, which sounds strange. You think Small Business Administration. I'm a homeowner, I don't have a small business. But yes, it is through SBA. And it is a loan of up to $200,000, 30 years, 1.8%. 86 Coloradans have already completed that. So that's 15.3 million in low interest loans that Coloradans have already gotten. That's an average loan size of about 175,000. That's 86. If you're eligible and you lost your home, and most folks are, it depends on having good credit, but if you were paying your mortgage and you're on time, for many folks, that 200,000 it can be the difference between the actual cost of rebuilding and what your insurance might cover. So I just want to encourage people to take advantage of that. But see what else is out there for you. In addition to the FEMA program, all the nonprofits that Tatiana will talk about and support, they're almost all present at the Disaster Assistance Center, 1755 South Public Road. Everything from pet pantry, helping with pet food, clothing. People don't realize this, but people lost all their clothing, like instantly. They just had the clothes on their back. So really everything is coming together to help folks. And we wouldn't be able to do it without so many of our really generous donors, many of which are on this call, many of which might be watching this. I also want to indicate that we also have a Marshall Fire Donation and Resource Center. This is where if you want to drop off, shampoo or toothbrushes, and by the way, if there's more than is needed, they will certainly be donated to those in need. That's at Flatirons Crossing Mall, the former Nordstrom's between Macy's and Dick's Sporting Goods at 21 West Flatiron Crossing. That opens tomorrow, and it's open from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. So if you have stuff to drop off, drop it off. If you lost or you can't get back to your home, or you lost your home and you need anything, you can get it there. They're also making that available at the South Boulder Road location, but that's for drop-offs for anything you want to do. Just so you know, the average FEMA payout for a Marshall fire survivor is only $6,000. So I just want to make sure people understand why there's a need for the philanthropic community to step up. Insurance takes a long time. Many people are underinsured relative to costs. It takes a while to process. There might even be some that don't have it if they were renters. FEMA, very small. The loan, only if you have good credit, and that's for a gap. It's not nearly enough to rebuild. And that's really why the philanthropic community needs to come together. The Boulder County Disaster Assistance Center, as an example, helped a man celebrate the 30th anniversary of his home in Old Town Superior when the fire hit. He was at work during the fire. He lost his home and sadly his dog and his cat. Thank you to the community foundation. He got funding to help him get his life back. And he wants to rebuild the property. We are joined today by some of the organizations that are helping to make the recovery possible. First, we are joined by Tatiana Hernandez. Tatiana is president of the Community Foundation of Boulder County, which has been the repository, the fiscal agent, for the over $17 million in donations that have poured in. Before I turn it over to Tatiana, I want to do some of our other guests, some of our top donors, who along with the $5 or $10 that you've given online at coloradogives.org/Boulder County Wildfire Fund, have helped us reach this goal. We have a remarkable corporate citizen in Boulder County and across Colorado in Ball Corporation. They've been here longer than I can remember, and they're deeply dedicated with strong roots in our community. And of course, many of their employees and employees' families were directly affected by the fires. I want to thank John Hayes from Ball Corporation for really stepping up. And we owe Ball a debt of gratitude for a $1 million donation to support the victims of the Marshall Fire. Thank you, Ball Aerospace. Thank you, John. We also have Brian Kane from Civitas. Now, Civitas is a new name, but it's several other companies that came together in our state, really dedicated. I believe they're not only based in our state, all of their significant operations are in our state. And we are grateful to Civitas for stepping up with a $1 million donation for the wildfire victims. Thank you, Brian. We also want to thank Lennar, King Soopers, the Cats Amsterdam Foundation, and the Denver Broncos for making sizable donations to the Wildfire Relief Fund. I also want to thank Kyle Clark and his listeners for raising $2 million on air for the Community Foundation of Boulder County. Thank you to Kyle Clark and his viewers. In a moment, we'll hear from John and Brian about the importance of businesses and organizations stepping up to help those in need. But first, I want you to learn more about the really important work being done on the ground by the Boulder Community Foundation since the fire. And I'll turn it over to Tatiana. Tatiana?
Thank you so much, Governor Polis. Our community and state are fortunate to have your leadership during this unimaginable time. I am particularly grateful to you and your team for your swift action in securing federal disaster relief and in the support of our foundation as we work to meet the needs of the moment. The Community Foundation Boulder County, we want to thank the over 57,000 individuals, foundations, and companies who have collectively donated, as of this morning, nearly $19.5 million to support our friends and neighbors. This unbelievable generosity allowed us to quickly distribute approximately $3.8 million to nearly 1,400 people. We know money cannot replace all that was lost. We do hope, however, that this initial support gives people a small sense of stability as they try to navigate what comes next. An advisory committee has been established for the Boulder County Wildfire Fund. The committee will help inform our board on how future support will be given. And I will as quickly as I can, read through the committee members. They are Sue Anderson, board chair for the Community Foundation Boulder County, Heather Balser, former city manager for the city of Louisville, Scott Beard, trustee for the Community Foundation Boulder County and a representative of the LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce, Larry Dorsey, chair of the Historical Commission for the town of Superior, Nicole Garcia, faith leader and board member of Out Boulder County, Deb Gardner, former commissioner for Boulder County, Prabir Ghosh, president and CEO of Virtual Source Networks and a Superior resident, Carly Hare, national director for Change Philanthropy and board chair for Impact on Education, Stuart Kingsbury of Kingsbury CPAs, Jonathan Lev, executive director of the Boulder JCC, Richard Lopez, board president for Calwood, Dina Miller, executive director of the Superior Chamber of Commerce, Ann O'Connell, former member of the Planning Commission for the city of Louisville, Edwina Salazar, former executive director of Our Center, Isaac Sendros, CEO of Avista Adventist Hospital, Cami Siemens, former executive director of Boulder Jewish Family Services, Chuck Sisk, former mayor of the city of Louisville, and Narayan Shrestha, a business owner and community leader. The committee was briefed on Friday by leaders of the disaster response. From that meeting, the committee recommended and our board approved a $150,000 grant to United policyholders so they can offer support to anyone who needs help navigating their insurance policies. Those representatives are on site at the Disaster Assistance Center at 1755 South Public Road, as the governor mentioned. It will take time to understand the short and long-term needs in our community. The foundation will continue to act thoughtfully and with integrity to make support available as easily as possible to those who need it. It has truly taken a village to wrap our arms around our friends and neighbors. We could not have provided this initial support without our partners at Boulder County, Community First Foundation, our banking partners, Flatirons and BOKF, and of course, the amazing corporate supporters, including Ball Aerospace, Civitas Resources, and Lennar. Our community has, as it always does, shown up for each other in an enormous way. We are still at the beginning of a long road, but I know our community will be rebuild better and stronger than it was.
I woke up cold.
Thank you.
I can't tell if I think the heat's running. I can't.
Okay, thank you. And I next want to introduce John Hayes. You know, Ball Corporation is really one of the corporate citizens Colorado's most proud of. It was founded back in 1880 as the Wooden Jacket Can Company in Buffalo, New York. But like so many New Yorkers, they moved to Colorado. They're based in Broomfield. They are in everything from aerospace to packaging, an enormous success story nationally and internationally, and really stepping up in the time of our community's greatest need. I want to turn it over to CEO John Hayes.
Great. Thank you, Governor. People ask me if I would say a couple of words about why it's important for not only Ball Corporation, but all of Colorado to be giving back to the community here. And in summary, it's the right thing to do. You know, at Ball Corporation, the governor just mentioned, we've been around 142 years. We often talk about sustainability, not only in terms of environmental sustainability, but also social sustainability and giving back to the communities in which we live and operate. And this is a great example of it. We employ over 7,000 people in the state of Colorado. You know, more than 500 of those people lived in the evacuation zone. Over 21 of those families lost everything, and dozens more are temporarily displaced because of smoke damage and other things like that. You know, with hours of the fire, we were able to mobilize our emergency response system to check in on all our folks. And it was as simple as press 1 if you're not in the evacuation zone, press 2 if you are in the evacuation zone, but you're okay, and press 3 if you're in the evacuation zone and need help. And it was very quickly, we realized the gravity of this situation, and we were immediately in touch with the governor and his office to figure out where the greatest need was. And I think in working with the governor, so thank you, Governor, we quickly zeroed in on the Community Foundation of Boulder County, and specifically the Boulder County Wildfire Fund. And we're honored to be donating the $1 million we are, but more importantly, our own people around the world, not only just in Colorado, donated an additional 250,000 plus to it, and Ball's going to be matching that as well. I think it's real important that we do that because there are a lot of needs, and whether it's short-term or long-term rental, transportation, pet support, as the governor mentioned, clothing, phone chargers, you name it. The needs are great right now. But lastly, let's not also forget about the mental health issues that are going on around it, whether it's about the folks that have lost everything and are overwhelmed and the anxiety they're feeling, or even those people whose houses were spared, but yet their neighbors weren't, and the feeling of survivor guilt. You know, I do think at this time, great neighborhoods are created by great neighbors, and this is the opportunity to be great. So thank you, Governor.
Thank you. And another one of our $1 million donors is Civitas, and I want to thank Brian Kane and his team, and I'll turn it over to Brian.
Governor, thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and thank you for all that you're doing for these communities and for our state at this time. We at Civitas watched in real time as these communities were devastated by wildfire, and we were deeply moved to do what we could to help these impacted individuals and families. It's in times like these that we must provide for our neighbors in a way that is real and meaningful. And that's why Civitas has pledged $1 million to the Community Foundation of Boulder County to assist in this relief effort on an ongoing basis, because we know that this is an organization that is of this community. They're not going anywhere, and they're going to continue marshaling support to those who need it most, not for weeks or months, but throughout this year and into the next, as we move past triage to recovery and ultimately to rebuilding. We wish to thank Tatiana Hernandez for her outstanding leadership of the Community Foundation. And we hope that this donation is taken as part of a broader pledge that Civitas Resources will be there for our communities where we live and work. And we thank you again for all your leadership in this effort, Governor. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. You know, this fire was absolutely horrific, but it's often the darkest times that bring out the best in our neighbors and friends. I want us to thank the business community who stepped up, the individual donors who stepped up. There's still great need out there. Go to coloradogives.org. You can click on Boulder County Wildfire Fund. People don't often realize that there's a lot of gaps between the county response, state, federal. Nobody gets made whole in this disaster. The philanthropic piece helps fill in those gaps in a way that supports families more flexibly and quicker than many of the official routes, which ultimately might give them some compensation, a small fraction of what they've lost. Thank you to all of those on this call and to every donor out there who's helped build a strong support network for our Marshall Fire families and victims. With that, we'll open it up to questions.
Hi there, this is Alex Rose with Fox 31. Tatiana, good to see you again. This one's for you. $17 million raised, it just sounds like a massive amount of money. And I'm just wondering if you could give us some historical perspective on just how large this giving campaign has been for your nonprofit compared to some of the other disasters that you guys have had your hands in to try to help victims. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Alex. I would start by saying I think the amount raised, so just a quick correction, is 19.5 as of this morning. And the amount is really equal to the size of the devastation. And I would say we're still quite short of what might be needed to make people whole. To the governor's point, philanthropic support will fill gaps where insurance will fall short. We anticipate that insurance will fall short for many because of increased labor costs, because of increased construction costs. In terms of the size of this, it is certainly the largest emergency fund that our community foundation has managed in our history. However, it's not the first. This is the 6th emergency fund in our foundation's history and the 4th in the last 2 years. We are very fortunate to have members on our team that have national and career-long disaster philanthropy experience. So we're leaning on that experience as well as that of other community foundations that have unfortunately had similar events happen in their community, including North Valley Community Foundation, who was in response to the Paradise Fire in California. So we're in contact with our peers to learn their best practices. But I hope that answers your question.
Additional questions from the press?
Yes, hi, I'm Kathy Walker with KOA, and I believe Governor Tatiana and Mr. Hayes, you all touched on how do we even begin to identify the short and long-term issues here. It's hard for me as a journalist not to go, where are these people going to live? And Mr. Hayes, I think you eloquently mentioned mental health issues. I guess I'd give all of you a stab at where do we begin and end? What's the alpha and the omega here?
So I'll just take it briefly first. The physical rebuilding, for those who want to rebuild, takes some time. Debris needs to be cleared. New plans need to be drawn up. In fact, with where the economy is today, there are disruptions in the supply chain that make materials and labor even harder than usual. So I think for most families in the 1 to 2 year time frame is probably the closest you could possibly realistically look at rebuilding, for many closer to 2 years. In the meantime, you have families whose kids go to the neighborhood school, who need a place to live in an area of our state that doesn't have a lot of extra housing. There's not 1,000 or close to it rental units on the market within any number of miles from the areas devastated by the wildfires. So it's how do you really have a custom solution that works for each family? Some might be able to stay with friends for a couple months till they rent something. Others might be in short-term housing. There's lots of different options. It's not going to be one answer for everybody, but the philanthropic money can help fill those gaps to help make a plan that works for each family a reality while they go about the difficult work of rebuilding their home. Tatiana and John, do you want to address that as well?
Happy to add that there's a committee that's been established that's specifically looking at short-term housing solutions. There are partners that we can bring in for temporary housing. And yes, and they come at a cost. And so to the governor's point, the philanthropic support helps to fill the gap even in terms of the housing stock that we have available to us. But that's a significant need. I think, Kathy, what I would say is we're really fortunate to be on the ground and have local relationships as a community foundation. And so in terms of even identifying the need, we lean on our local partners who are directly interfacing with residents, and helping them understand FEMA and helping them understand their policies, and really getting a sense of what is the time frame, how many homes are needed. If we need to put up some temporary housing in the community, where could we do that? But it is a collective effort, and certainly not a small effort.
Yeah, and Kathy, I might just add, if you go back and think about the floods, I think there's some good lessons learned in there. And in some cases, it was 4, 5, even 6 years before some of the communities that were directly affected got back to normal of that. And so, I know that those are sobering numbers, but exactly to what the governor said, it's going to take time to clear the debris. It's going to take time to rebuild. And this is why it's so important for all of us to rally as one.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? I just want to, on behalf of the state of Colorado, thank Ball, Civitas, Boulder Community Foundation, and every donor that stepped up, whether it's $1 or whether it's $1 million. You've given what you can. This will help the families that are facing almost the unimaginable, right? Losing every single thing they have, except for the clothes on their back and what they could throw in their car in 3 minutes or 5 minutes in the face of 105-mile-an-hour wind gusts and flames on both sides of their road as they tried to exit their home and save their lives. Thank you to Ball. Thank you to Boulder Community Foundation. Thank you to Civitas. And thank you to all of you.
We have a few more questions.
We have a few more questions. Okay.
Mhm. Amy?
Okay, if there's no more.
Alex Burness.
Is there one more question? Okay, go ahead, Alex.
Hi. Mr. Hayes actually was just getting to what I wanted to ask about. After the floods, we saw communities changed forever, right? There were people in places like Lyons who could never come back. And that was evident shortly afterward, that there just wasn't going to be housing for them, and they didn't have time to wait around for it, not to mention money. You mentioned, Governor, there's not 1,000 affordable units or any kind of rental units just sitting there in Superior or Louisville waiting for these folks now. So for a lot of these people, they're going to have to make that call soon, if they haven't already, to move on somewhere else in Colorado or the county or out of state. So what can Colorado do? What can you do as a governor? What can the legislature do, or local governments do preemptively for the next tragedy like this, to make sure that communities are better positioned to be resilient and to make sure that people can get housing and stability quickly?
So, no, and you're right. And many families are looking in Westminster and Longmont, in Denver and Lakewood. They're looking all over the region in Boulder, trying to find a temporary home. I'm confident that the homes will be rebuilt. Now, some families want to move on. I mean, I met a woman who lost her entire home. She's in her late 70s or early 80s. She was ready to put it on the market and move to an apartment anyway a few months ago. This sort of accelerated her plans. She herself won't be rebuilding, but she will sell the plot and somebody will rebuild. And she was moving to a smaller apartment anyway. Other families I've met, they're ready to rebuild as quickly as possible. They want their neighborhood back. They want their home back. They're near their kids' school. They're ready to go. So different strokes for different folks. Alex, your question could go anywhere in terms of the future. Obviously, fire risk being one with the changing climate. How do we build more defensible perimeters around subdevelopments in areas that are, we used to say near the wildland interface, but nobody would say downtown Old Town Superior is near the wildland interface. It's a century-old coal town that is a thriving community and lost much of their old town. The town hall itself was barely spared. I made a brick. It's still standing there. There might be damage inside, but the fire went right through the entire block. So is there a particular place with your question, Alex? Is it about fire awareness or more just about housing?
It's more about housing.
Yeah. So I would say the hope on housing is the opportunity to work with the Republicans and Democrats in the legislature on the historic investment in housing that's possible thanks to the federal funding through the American Rescue Act. So there was a bipartisan group that has worked on a report on how to make the biggest impact with a $500 million investment, leveraging that with private investment, with cities, with counties. And I think that if there's any learning out of this fire, it's how can it be a resilient investment model where we're creating housing that also in a significant way can reduce the risk of loss of housing and homes in the future.
Fun.
Hello, everyone. This is Sergio Ornelas, a news reporter with Telemundo Denver. If you could please repeat some of that information in Spanish, either the governor or Tatiana, for our Spanish-speaking audience, and also specifically, is there any efforts to help those who are not citizens but have been affected by the fires?
I'll let Tatiana do most of it, but no se importa si es ciudadano para recibir los fondos filantrópicos. Es muy importante para toda la gente que no son elegibles para fondos de FEMA. Over to you, Tatiana.
Gracias, gobernador. Lo dijiste perfectamente. Todas las personas afectadas en la área del Marshall Fire pueden venir al Centro de Asistencia de Desastre para recibir fondos de la Fundación Comunitaria del Condado de Boulder. No importa si son ciudadanos, solamente tienen que demostrar que vivieron en una casa que estaba dañada o destruida. Is that good for you, Sergio?
Yes, thank you very much.
A la orden.
Hi, Governor. This is Vinny Del Giudice at Bloomberg News in Denver. With the legislative session starting up, do you anticipate any hearings or legislations in the aftermath of the fire? What to do about rebuilding? What to do about safety precautions that may be taken to prevent future disasters? Thank you very much, sir.
Well, look, there's already a statewide discussion about the increased fire risk. We experienced the 3 largest wildfires in the history of our entire state in the summer of 2020. In terms of property damage, this fire was even more disruptive to more lives, even given its small size, because it essentially was an urban and suburban fire that affected downtown areas and subdevelopments, egged on by 105-degree wind gusts and historically dry conditions with very little snow and no snow on the ground prior to the event. We look forward to continuing the conversation with the legislature about fire preparedness in our state. We've already worked with them to fund an additional, last year, a new Firehawk helicopter. But keep in mind that all of the technology in the arsenal of the world wouldn't have been able to fight a fire with 105-degree gusts. No aircraft can fly. The ability of firefighters was severely hampered by the strong winds, and the detection technology was also very difficult. The evacuation worked well thanks to the heroic efforts of the firefighters. It seems likely only 2 lives were lost, and there were many people that only had minutes to get out. So yes, we plan on focusing this conversation on steps forward that we could take with the legislature to improve fire safety across Colorado.
No more questions.
Thank you to everybody. Ball, Civitas, thank you. All of the donors who made this possible. Tatiana, for your capable administration and getting them out. You know, nobody wants it sitting on a shelf. I know you're deploying those resources as we speak to people who need it in their time of need. Thank you, and thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, John. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Be well.